And at the beginning of it all, Lloyd faces an angel and his army of soldiers. And after eliminating all the being's henchmen, Lloyd is left alone with the angel, who in turn informs him that he will not be forgiven even if he begs for mercy. At this, Lloyd says he is satisfied with this outcome of his life. Well, at another point, Ren goes to Lloyd's room to wake him, but upon seeing that he is not there, Ren begins to worry until suddenly, Lloyd appears right behind her, startling her, and says that now he is able to hide his presence much more easily and efficiently. Seeing that he learned this technique so quickly, Ren is surprised and reminds him that it took her literally a year to learn it, something Lloyd picked up in such a short time of training. Having said that, she tries to compliment him, but ends up feeling embarrassed. Noticing that the girl is still a little uncomfortable in his presence, Lloyd reminds her that she's been working with him for several days, but she says it's still too early for her to fully adapt. And although Silpha is training her correctly, Ren says she's a very strict tutor and demands a lot from her, and because of that, she's willing to train as hard as she can to become the ideal servant for Lloyd. Suddenly, Silpha arrives, and upon seeing Ren treating Lloyd so casually, she tells him to stop. Later, Lloyd goes out into the yard to play in Galilea's webs. Meanwhile, Dao asks Galilea if he's getting used to the life of a ruler yet, and he replies yes, but with a look of uncertainty. Dao then says he never imagined seeing him as the ruler of Lordost, and Galilea says the same. After all, she believed Lloyd would take over from the beginning. Upon hearing this, Lloyd reminds him that his father gave him the authority to appoint whomever he wanted, so he leaves the rest of the tasks to Galilea, unafraid of her choice. Furthermore, the boy informs them that the place will become a great source of research if it becomes a refuge for people like Galilea and her friends. During the conversation, Babylon suddenly appears and says that reforming the kingdom will take considerable time. After all, the demons have caused a terrible mess there. As for Galilea, he promises that as the new ruler of the kingdom, he will not allow anything like that to happen again. Upon hearing this, Grimm takes the lead and suggests they use holy magic. After all, this is the best magic to use against the demon race. Grimm says he knows this because he is also a demon, and therefore, he knows the weaknesses of his fellow demons better than anyone. And when they discover he's also a demon, everyone is shocked. Grimm, offended by his friend's startled reaction, asks them to be respectful. With that said, Grimm returns to discussing sacred magic, explaining that it's a type of magic only those devoted to the church have access to, and they use this divine power for the sole purpose of dispelling evil. And while it may sound like nonsense, Grimm claims that sacred magic can keep demons away. Upon hearing all this, Lloyd looks at him with a wry smile and confesses that he messed up at church, and because of that, he was expelled from the institution and can no longer use the divine powers it provided. But considering that this incident was 2 years ago, Lloyd assumes they've already forgotten about it and decides to try entering the church again. Upon arriving, Ren says she doesn't really like the atmosphere the place exudes, so Lloyd suggests she not enter the church with them. Since you don't feel comfortable with the environment, however, she brushes it off anyway, saying she wants to spend time with Lloyd. Once inside the church, Lloyd immediately approaches the priest. The priest converses with him normally, but after a few seconds, he remembers Lloyd and begins to insult him in every way, saying he'll never forget what he did in the church 2 years ago. Therefore, the priest tells him to leave as soon as possible. At this point, Escher steps in to help Lloyd and tries to convince the priest to quickly forget what happened in the past. However, he maintains his opinion and criticizes Escher for always being too lenient with people. As for her, Escher reminds him that he himself always says that people should be forgiven even if they continue to make mistakes. After all, God always forgives them. Furthermore, Escher says that no one else is angry about what happened. But upon hearing this, the priest says he is angry, but upon seeing Shiro's cuteness, he begins to calm down. He makes it clear that he hasn't yet fully accepted Lloyd's return to the church, as he will still need to earn his trust as he works there. A few minutes later, Lloyd begins cleaning the church, feeling a certain boredom, and in doing so, ends up knocking over and breaking one of the church's vases. Seeing this, Escher tries to reassure him, saying he broke the vase by accident. But as soon as she realizes that the broken vase is the priest's favorite, Escher begins to worry a little more. However, she decides to cover for Lloyd, saying she apologized in his place. However, Lloyd interrupts her and says that since he was the one who destroyed the vase, it's he who should apologize. Suddenly, Ren arrives and notices Lloyd looking a little different. However, Escher says the boy is still the same good-natured Lloyd he always was. Hearing this, Ren becomes interested in learning more about the boy's younger self. To this, Escher says that, in fact, he never changed. After all, Lloyd was already a magic fanatic when he was a child, and Lloyd also used to accidentally break church vases, another habit he's maintained ever since. And as she says this, she remembers a time when Lloyd destroyed a church vase, and at the time, he asked to be punished with sacred magic, wanting to experience divine power firsthand. But as soon as she hears him asking for something like this, Escher reminds him that sacred magic should only be used on truly evil people. Instead of punishing him, she suggests they sing together. However, Lloyd leaves the church, disappointed by what he hears, and then returns with a giant monster and sets it to destroy the entire church. At this, people begin to run in fear, until suddenly Escher notices Lloyd behind one of the pillars. Still unaware that he was responsible responsible for all this. She throws herself toward him to save him. And seeing that the boy was okay, Escher feels more relieved. But a few days after this incident, Escher says that Lloyd confessed to the church what he did, and because of that, he ended up being expelled from the institution. In addition, he began to be seen by the church as a demon, but Escher is one of the people who is against this position, because for her, Lloyd continues to be a good boy. And remembering that there will be a recital at the church later that day, Escher decides to call Lloyd to join them. And meanwhile, Lloyd walks through the streets, until suddenly, he sees Saria being intimidated by two men who are arguing because they bumped into each other. And as for her, Saria asks if they know to play a musical instrument, but the men say no. At that, the girl turns her back on the troublemakers and leaves. As for Lloyd, he explains to his friends that Saria is actually the fourth princess of the kingdom of Saloum, in addition to being a musical prodigy. And although she appears to be a very important person, Lloyd makes it clear that Saria is just a music addict and has no interest in anything other than music. And suddenly, the same man who approached Saria approaches her again and claims to know how to play an instrument in this case. He's good at making women scream. Seeing this, Escher pulls the man away from Saria and tells her that the girl is his friend, not a musical instrument. But upon hearing this, the man continues to try to provoke, saying that he now owns to instruments. As for the priest, he begins to worry about the progress of the recital that will take place at the church later that day. Lloyd appears to have heard nothing, and then Babylon informs him that a recital will be taking place with Escher and Saria, and rumor has it that the melody of the girls' voices supposedly heals the wounds of the devout. As for Saria, she criticizes the way he extracts melodies from Escher, because although he managed to make her sing, he also ended up drawing tears from her. Upon hearing this, the man becomes enraged and tries to attack her, but at that very moment, Ren uses his mana focus to block the mana from her body, and in this state, she makes a single opening to release mana, thus achieving more powerful and consistent magic. And having used this magic on the priest and the bandits, she manages to momentarily destabilize them, but it doesn't take long for them to recover. Babylon then begins to attack them, intending to beat them to death. However, Lloyd stops him, and instead of beating the bandits, he simply teleports them to another location so they won't be harmed and won't bother them. After the priest wakes up, Lloyd and the others tell him everything that happened while he was sleeping, and Lloyd gives Babylon all the credit, saying he was responsible for extinguishing all the bandits that appeared around the church. But upon hearing this, Babylon says that, in fact, he acted under Lloyd's rules. After the priest leaves, Escher talks again about the church recital and asks Lloyd to sing. However, Saria opposes this idea, saying he should only participate in the recital when he's trained enough. When the time comes for the performance, Saria begins playing the piano, providing accompaniment while Escher sings the song. As for Lloyd, he watches the two girls perform from afar, amazed by each melody the girls create. Suddenly, he decides to draw his sword, and upon doing so, Lloyd encounters a kind of magical notation on the blade made of geometric shapes, something he'd never seen before. While briefly speaking with Grimm, Lloyd says he felt a strange gaze directed at them when the recital began. As for Grimm, who hadn't noticed it before, she begins to feel frightened when she realizes that someone is indeed staring at them. However, Grimm doesn't know where it's coming from, but Lloyd says the presence seems to be right above them, and he deduces it's one of God's servants. Lloyd uses his teleportation to go to the source of this presence, but ends up in an empty place with only clouds. However, after walking a little further, they reach a bell. After Lloyd finds who was watching him, he discovers that it was actually a depraved angel who was watching, and cosplaying as Sanji for Escher and Saria, directly from heaven until the angel is interrupted by a ball of Lloyd's cloud, which initially made the angel furious. But upon realizing that humans have entered the kingdom of heaven, he introduces himself as Jeriel, an acolyte of the 64 deities of paradise, and asks how mere humans can invade that sacred barrier. Lloyd wastes no time and asks him to teach him sacred magic. However, the angel is narcissistic and begins to talk about whether his beauty made the boy want to get closer to him by learning magic. Grin in turn goes up to the angel, asking how a pervert like him can be an angel. With that, Lloyd asks again to teach him magic, but the angel remains snobbish, and after turning his back, he casts magic to finish off the invaders. However, he didn't count on Lloyd easily defending them, and he understands how they managed to be there. Ren is very worried about the boy's disappearance, and says that she was feeling a look, while Babylon in turn calms her down and says that she was feeling something different. Lloyd, in turn, was in ecstasy in heaven dueling with the angel. In this, he realized that the magic seemed like feathers, but heavy and hard as steel, providing perfect balance, and on top of that, he couldn't absorb it. And so the boy comes to the conclusion that swords are generated only with the use of mana, without limitations, but he did not feel afraid, on the contrary. Now he wants to see how durable that magic is, so he prepares to invoke his most powerful magics, which made the angel flee behind the barriers but did not stop Lloyd's fierce attack, who in turn appears behind the angel and asks why he was dodging, and after the scare, the angel launches the upgrade in his magic and says that he will not retreat in honor of his celestial position, and on top of that he calls Lloyd's magic basic. But while the angel was bragging, Lloyd only saw ways to test the durability even if he ran away. So he found himself with no option but to use his dark wolf magic, which brought together several circles where they conditioned a strong attack from different directions, leaving the angel screwed. I mean, totally screwed. But the angel still managed to escape, which left Lloyd disappointed in himself for getting the magic wrong. Grin, in turn, is frightened because Lloyd used the same magic that Gisarm used, in this case sending matter directly to a target, offensive teleportation with that. Grin comes up to him and says that the level of magic is impressive, but he'd better take it easy because even the angel could have dragged himself away if it got to him, and that it was a little cruel. And after Lloyd jokes that the angel's magic is invincible, he said it himself. The boy reveals that he can rest assured, as he would not use Jade's magic in that way, thus reassuring Grin. And right after, Lloyd sends a circle of flame magic to the angel, who quickly dodges. Grin takes advantage and shouts that Lloyd doesn't want to kill him, so he stops being a coward and shows how sacred magic works. And after, the angel continues lying, saying that he is not worthy of his magic, and that will just dodge. Lloyd thinks that the activation time of the opening spell for the angel to do those annex. And when the angel came up, however, Lloyd just improved his magic so that he could activate it at the moment of teleportation. And so it was done. At the last second, the boy had a barbecue with the angel, which made Grin even scream, telling him to apologize while there was still a chance. However, the angel says that his magic is infinite and that he can repair as many times as necessary, which of course made Lloyd surprised and excited about that level, and wanted to know what the limit of the angel's repair was, who in turn regretted it bitterly and murmured that it wasn't as big a deal as he was thinking. And in the last second, the angel screams that he lied and that he does have a limit, and continues apologizing while being exploded consecutively. After that chaos, the entire angel was transparent, and Grin explains that ethereal entities like them are basically composed of mana. And so Lloyd came to the conclusion that as long as he has mana, he can produce swords infinitely. Already on his deathbed, the angel thinks it was a remarkable battle, but he will spend the rest of his life wanting to learn sacred magic, so the angel wins. But Lloyd launches a discharge of magic at him. Surprised, the angel asks why he is sharing his mana with him if he tried to kill him. But Lloyd says he doesn't care, he just wants to learn sacred magic. Minutes later, the angel was immense, looking like Snorlax, due to the mana overload, which made him wonder who the boy was, as that level of mana was above humanity. And so the angel sees a chance to get a connection with the earthly plane, and announces that he will teach him sacred magic, but first they must make a pact, and he asks him to extend his hand. The boy does so innocently, but behind the scenes, the angel's plan was to possess his body to visit Earth and see the girls he had been stalking so much. Grin quickly realized the intention, but it was too late. The angel only became the boy's hand, and he has to hope to undo this pact before the boy gets older. And so Grin burst out laughing, saying that the angel is a clown, that his mana is only equivalent to the palm of Lloyd's hand, and that he should have known better. Already defeated, the angel continues with the preparations, saying that to teach sacred magic, the angel must engrave the magic formula in the candidate's soul. After that, the path is created through songs and other means. And so he said to call with his soul such magic. Grin worriedly asked if he is okay, and if he caught any disease from that pervert. But Lloyd says that everything is fine, that he can now easily understand the language of sacred magic in his mind. The angel then brags about the boy, saying that holy magic is amazing, while Grin in turn thinks that that idiot doesn't realize what just happened. Now that Lloyd has mastered holy magic, he has enough power to conquer both heaven and the underworld. He could simply usurp the throne of the demon lord if he wanted, but Lloyd says he is disappointed, as learning was very easy, as he enjoys the processes, and that looking only at the results tends to be boring. After all, exploring each step of the structure is very interesting, just as he read spell books and wondered how it became that and how it was thought, as if solving a puzzle, and that there is moments when he is learning, which is as if he were looking at the face of the predecessors who created all that is. He doesn't care about making an effort, and so he will try to use Luxa, which is the angel's magic, where he tells him to try and see what form the magic will take, since it suits whoever is conjuring it. Meanwhile, in the angel's mind, he wondered what made that boy go to paradise in search of magic, but he can feel sincere feelings while he is connected to him, just the typical pure and genuine feeling that is expected of an angel, and that the boy reminds him of a certain someone, a boy who earned his respect a long time ago. And the angel thinks that perhaps in his service to the gods he has forgotten about this, and that he should look more deeply into things. But his thoughts are interrupted by the monstrous magic that covers the entire place where they were. Grin then screams for him to stop, but Lloyd says that it is not finished yet, leaving the angel and Grin completely scared. The angel then says that he appears with the 8 shining wings of an archangel, but Grin, angry, says that it is anything but angelic and that he is going crazy. But the angel, besides ignoring Grin, also asks for permission to accompany Lloyd, which made Grin shout at him to stop that magic, which was more like a god of destruction. Meanwhile on Earth, Babylon observed everything and thought he smelled a smell that didn't match the church, which the flowers did a good job of camouflaging, but rats have sharp noses, and that normally he wouldn't investigate, but that could lead to a sit of the sacred magic that Lloyd wants so much. But he is interrupted by a man who asks if he was lost, and proposes to help the boy return to his rightful place again. But Babylon says that the roses there are catching his attention. However, the man continues saying that it is a waste not to see that phenomenal presentation, and when asked who he was, the man says he is a priest, and that it is his duty to guide parishioners who have strayed from their path, which makes Babylon say that he only guides the lost. But the priest ignores him and says that despite this, even after many years of an arduous mission, he still tends to get lost sometimes. But the serious mood returns when Babylon asks if his carelessness was what made him not wear a crucifix at that moment too. And he also adds that he was informed that clerics have to use it at all times. And he even shows his saying that they even gave it to him who is a novice at this point. The priest simply pulls out his golden crucifix and says that it was an oversight on his part and that he should use the priest mistake as an example to learn from, and that if he entered the clergy, he should not break those taboos, and therefore the place where he is sacred and should not be trampled lightly either. Babylon in turn just apologizes and then finds Ren and Shiro, in which Ren says that the recital will end soon, but Shiro observes the atmosphere that was between Babylon and the priest and goes into attack mode. Babylon then says that the priest seems to be very devout. After all, he must polish that crucifix every day, that or he doesn't even use it, and that the crucifix looks very immaculate for a long-time member of the church. The priest just agrees and says that his furry friend has a very beautiful coat, while Shiro was scared trying to hide. And he continues saying that he is a very intelligent dog and seems to be well cared for, but when the priest waves his fingers to prepare an attack, Lloyd appears behind him with his teleportation magic, surprising everyone. Lloyd in turn just asks what everyone is doing out there since the recital is going on. And as Lloyd approached, Ren asked where he had been, but when he passed the priest, a psychological and imperceptible clash occurred as the priest turned towards Lloyd. However, the boy just continued playing with Shiro and reassuring him, asking what happened, and then disturbing his friends as he took them to the recital. The angel in turn sees the priest's face and realizes that it was the man who in the past he had earned his respect. And back at the church, the nun asked what he thought of the recital, and with the greatest nerve he says that it was incredible from beginning to end, leaving his friends in disbelief. And upon hearing the voice, the angel was struggling with emotion inside Lloyd's cloak. Then Babylon asks if the inner garden is considered a sacred place, and the nun says yes. After all, they use it to give rest to the faithful's pets. What scared Babylon? Because that's where the smell of rot came from, and so he thinks it's hard to leave the life of a murderer behind, and that he keeps coming to the worst conclusions. Lloyd then asks him if he is okay, but Babylon thinks he has a lot of doubts in his head at that moment. While Lloyd goes to the priest and says he will stop going to church from that day on, Babylon thinks that he seems to have found what he needed apparently, and thinks that it is none of his business what happens there, and so decides to stop thinking until Escher comes to him and thanks him immensely for having saved her that afternoon, which leaves the boy thoughtful again. Meanwhile, the priest was stepping on his crucifix to make it dirtier. After all, he lost his original crucifix and recently received this new one. Then a gap opens and demons talk to him mentally, where he says that it is not necessary to pursue them, but that he will increase security there so that they do not interfere with his plans, especially now that the day is near. And when meeting with friends of Lloyd, the angel starts to complain, showing that he didn't like at all having to make a pact with these beings, who to him are more like barbarians. Upon hearing this, Lloyd reminds him that his research into sacred magic will be much more efficient if they have more people on the team, so he asks the angel to help his friends to be able to use magic without having to do a ritual with him. In this, the angel makes it clear that Lloyd is an exception, therefore he does not really intend to sign a pact with no other being. As for Lloyd, he interrupts, reminding him that he attracts too much attention in his default form. So Lloyd asks the angel to assume a less conspicuous form. Upon hearing this, the angel quickly assumes the body of a cute, slightly smaller creature, believing this will be enough to shake Lloyd's heart. However, the boy disappoints him. After all, he wasn't even paying attention to what the angel was doing. Later, Lloyd encounters the citizens of Lordost again, who, upon seeing him, begin to stir up trouble due to their past disagreement. Upon seeing this, Talia apologizes to Lloyd, saying that the people of Lordost are indeed quite unruly. As for one of the troublemakers, he doesn't understand why Talia is bowing down to a simple boy like that. Seeing that no one will do anything to him, the two men try to deal with him, but are surprised by a bright glow from Lloyd. As soon as they are affected by the glow, the men change from water to wine, becoming more attentive and kind. Seeing this, Talia is astonished and realizes that Lloyd's magic has even managed to change the personality of the people of Lordost, something she thought practically impossible. As for the two men, they even begin to apologize for what happened, and furthermore, they promise to apologize to their sister as well. Hearing this, the angel is left confused, and Grimm informs him that those two went after Escher and Saria, having discovered what the two men actually did. The angel becomes irritated and decides to punish them both. Meanwhile, Babylon remains at the church, cooking for the sisters and gradually gaining everyone's trust so he can clean up the bad image. Lloyd left by running away from the church and his duties. Returning to the boy, Lloyd is approached by three servants, practically begging for his attention. Seeing this, the angel begins to envy the boy's popularity and says he practically lives in paradise. As for Grimm, he becomes irritated when he sees the angel so restless and tells him to behave if he wants to continue living there with them. Suddenly, another Lloyd calls out to the servants asking them to bring him some tea. Upon seeing the creature, the angel asks what exactly that Lloyd clone is. Grimm explains that Lloyd made a wooden doll of himself, as he uses this clone to perform basic tasks for him. And well, at another point, the real Lloyd returns to his room and says they'll need to start a ghoul hunt. After all, the undead are the perfect target if they want to test sacred magic. Upon hearing this, Grimm reminds him that this type of monster isn't so easy to find, but Lloyd says he already gathered enough information about ghouls when he was in Lordost. And during the conversation, Silpha enters his room after Lloyd summons her and asks what he needs. To this, Lloyd goes straight to the point and asks her to go on a ghoul hunt with him. And as soon as he hears the somewhat random request from the boy, Silpha turns her back and runs out of the room, and then she returns with her sword ready, and says that they can go whenever he wants, as she will be free for the mission. Well, moving on, Lloyd and his friends set off on a new journey, arriving at the Great Dam Bridge, which, according to the Adventurers Guild, is the place with the highest number of witnesses to ghoul sightings. Along the way, Lloyd grows slightly impatient with the delay in finding the creatures, and so he asks Silpha to use her sense of smell to locate the ghoul's lair more quickly. However, she reminds him that these monsters smell like rotting flesh, making it difficult to tell whether they are ghouls or simply the remains of expired food. As for Lloyd, he remembers that his presence detection isn't very useful around so many people. Suddenly, Lloyd and his group are approached by Saria and Escher, who claim to be there just for lunch, and they invite Lloyd to join them. Hearing her talk about pancakes, the boy becomes excited to try them and his eyes light up. And once at the restaurant, Shiro says he's amazed to see Lloyd in such a state of euphoria, because the only other times he's seen hiders so enthusiastic, Lloyd was discussing magic, the only subject he seemed to enjoy so much. Upon hearing Grimm say this, Lloyd counters, saying that pancakes can also be considered magical objects after all, the ingredients that make them produce an incredibly delicious treat, which, for Lloyd, can already be considered a feat comparable to magic. As for filling, she deduces that Lloyd is eating pancakes for the first time, and so suggests he start by eating them plain. After all, he needs to first experience the taste of pancakes in their base form. During the conversation, Saria asked what they were doing in that area. Lloyd and the others don't hesitate to tell the truth, making it clear that they're there to hunt ghouls. After all, according to witnesses, there are three places where ghouls are most commonly seen: the Great Dam Bridge, the Northern Cemetery, and the alleys to the south. As for Escher, she doesn't care much about this matter, saying she's only concerned about the recital, as with the increasing number of ghouls in the area, the recital may end up being cancelled. Depending on the monster's agitation, as they continue their journey, Lloyd and the others reach Dam Bridge and decide to enter the bridge's sewers in search of the ghouls. Silpha uses her sense of smell to confirm the presence of the ghouls, but as she does so, her nose nearly collapses from the stench, and she realizes that the ghouls are indeed in the sewers. As for Lloyd, he says he's worried about something he heard. Silpha deduces that he's thinking about the missing adventurers in the area. He in turn informs her that a friend of his, also an adventurer, recently disappeared, and so Lloyd decided to start searching for her in the area. Suddenly, Lloyd is surprised by Tao, who jumps on him when she realizes the boy is behind her. But upon hearing this, Silpha slaps the girl on the head and says that, in fact, Lloyd's hunt for ghouls is to test his sacred magic. Silpha makes it clear that Tao is just a supporting character in the whole story. As for Lloyd, he begins to question the place further, and since Tao is there, Lloyd confirms that the sewers really are the ghouls' lair. At this, Tao begins to cry, saying that she ended up getting lost in that dirty and smelly place. She loves when Chef felt Lloyd's presence around the area. Tao used that as her bearings until she finally managed to find him. Well, as soon as they leave the sewer, Tao decides to go straight to her quarters, needing to retrieve her lantern. But upon hearing this, Lloyd cast a purification spell called Sunlight, forming a luminous halo over her head, which in turn illuminates the entire place. Furthermore, the light generated by the halo also cleanses any dirt nearby. Seeing this, Tao realizes that with this clean air, she can finally fill her lungs and channel her chi more efficiently. As for Shiro, he decides to start searching for the ghouls alone. However, Lloyd notices that the stench in the surroundings will overwhelm Shiro's sense of smell, which will take him longer than usual to find the ghouls. So, Lloyd decides to use his presence detection to help scan the area. But during the process, he is surprised by Tao, who notices him him doing chi breathing. She asks him where he learned this technique. He in turn says he learned it from Silpha, which further angers her. With that, Silpha subdues Tao with a few more slaps, and Lloyd changes the subject, asking about the Demon Slayer sword. However, Silpha says she left it at home because she wants to keep it as clean as possible. As for Tao, she once again displays her childishness, inviting Silpha to a game to determine which of the two is the strongest. But upon hearing this, Silpha reminds her that the purpose of Mission 3 is to test sacred magic, so they have no time to waste on these silly games. Upon hearing this, Tao insists, saying that the winner of the game will be able to have a one-on-one meeting with Lloyd, since they're helping him with his experiment. Tao believes he should at least reward them with some kind of reward. Having said all this, Tao informs them that their game will have only one rule to win. They must kill the most ghouls. During the fight, Tao pulls ahead, killing several enemies. However, Silpha steps in and steals the ghouls Tao was killing. Silpha then adopts the same strategy, following the girl wherever she goes. Tao becomes even more irritated and tells her to stop copying his movements. But upon hearing this, Silpha tries to make an excuse, saying she's just testing the sharpness of her weapon. During the fight, Tao notices that Silpha is actually quite good at her moves, even though she's not using her chi or magic. As for Silpha, she also praises Tao's performance in her thoughts, but keeps this information to herself. Meanwhile, Ren stands off to the side, impressed by their strength. When he tries to attack one of the ghouls with his poison sword, Ren ends up destroying it. Lloyd throws a new sword at her, which, in addition to poison, also possesses a wealth of holy magic. Using the new blade against the ghouls, Ren finally manages to kill them, and by the end of the fight, the three girls are tied, leaving only one enemy remaining. They begin running toward him to kill him, and secure their meeting with Lloyd. Meanwhile, a man captures the church priest and appears willing to take possession of his body so he can roam freely around the church. But at that very moment, Saria finds the man attacking the priest and is shocked by what she sees. When trying to attack the creature, Tao ends up sitting down involuntarily, as if controlled by the creature, and then Silpha appears right behind her and cuts the wires the monster used to make her sit. As for Ren, she finally understands what's happening to them, but says it's impossible for a monster like that to have that much power. And as soon as the creature attacks the same wire toward Lloyd, he picks up the wire and analyzes it, and in the end, discovers that those wires give rise to the monster's spinal cord. Upon discovering this, Ren is certain she's dealing with a familiar monster. She recalls what she'd heard long ago about the neuron flagellate, a flagellate born in a small province. Apparently, its body is capable of producing an infinite number of spinal cords made of mana. When these cords come into contact with another person's limbs, they interfere with their motor nerves and override the brain's commands. Furthermore, the spinal cords wrapped in its skin have mana formulas for evasion and counterattack engraved on them, meaning this flagellate can move faster than the speed of thought. And because it's so powerful, this flagellate was even used as a biological weapon in a civil war, something that leaves Ren terribly upset. As for Jade, he explains that, like them, the neuron flagellate couldn't control its power. But in his case, the neuron flagellate has an absurd imbalance in its power, capable of destroying anyone it comes into contact with, friend or foe. And even after being shot in the heart, there are reports that this flagellate still continued to kill out of automatic reflex, having become an untouchable undead. To stop it, they had to destroy a piece of cliff and throw it into the sea. While the neuron flagellate's body sank beneath the raging waves, it continued to struggle the entire time. Well, back to the present. Tao notices that there is indeed a thread stuck to it. However, Rin says that this still doesn't make any sense, because according to rumors, the neuron flagellate died after sinking into the sea. However, Silpha says that a friend's story is true, even after death. The neuron flagellate's body continued to move, which means there's a possibility they're still alive. But Ren says these are just mechanical movements, nothing as intelligent and coordinated as the creature in front of them. She continues by saying it's impossible for it to be the neuron flagellate, even though all signs point to it. As for Lloyd, he deduces that the creature could indeed be the neuron flagellate, but in its ghoul form. Suddenly, Tao notices the monster coming at them again and prepares to attack. However, the monster produces even more threads to attack them. Meanwhile, Saria continues to monitor the attack on the priest, until suddenly, the servant tells his master that he prefers to possess Saria's body rather than the priest. Upon hearing this, the master authorizes his servant to act as he pleases, asking him only to make good use of the girl's body. But before the servant can completely dominate her, he is interrupted by Babylon, who arrives to resolve the situation. Returning to Lloyd and the others, they continue their confrontation against the monster, where Silpha says she has already understood how the enemy's attacks work. And then all three girls manage to get past threads thrown by the monster. However, the creature still manages to block all their attacks, as it uses its marrow threads to defend itself as well as attack. But noticing that all its limbs are already occupied, Ren uses his poison against the enemy. Although a ghoul, it is still affected by Ren's attack, as she used a neurotoxin that acts directly on the target's nervous system, thus preventing the creature from using its marrow threads. Having done this, Ren orders the girls to seize this opportunity to attack the monster, as it will not be paralyzed forever. Upon hearing this, Tao immediately immediately attacks, and then throws it to Silpha to deliver the final blow. Silpha then uses her lion's roar ability to attack the monster, implying that the creature has been completely eliminated. However, Silpha says that at the last second its automatic movements returned, so Silpha believes she gave it enough time to break its fall. Furthermore, she finds it strange that the monster is able to control its powers as it pleases. After all, she believed that all scourges couldn't control their powers so well. So Silpha deduces that the matter is more serious than they imagine. Just then, Silpha notices the monster fleeing and tells them not to let it get too far. As for the monster, it demonstrates some awareness, realizing it can't stand up to 3 adventurers as strong as them. Furthermore, it remembers that its master is still waiting for it at the church. However, the monster intends to go out and have some fun on the surface before going to meet its master. As for the adventurers it just faced, the monster says it will still meet them when the time is right. And well, remembering what his life was like when he was alive, the monster sums it up as a life of shit, as he was constantly mistreated, without a place to belong, until in the end, he ended up becoming an ethereal, a race that can possess the bodies of the living, controlling them as they see fit. But in his case, this only worked for those who were weak-minded. He then went on with his life like this, until suddenly, he met his master, who in turn informed him about a powerful corpse, nicknamed the Civil War Corpse, which continued to wield incredible power even after death. And since then, he has taken control of that being's body, and then asks his master what he wants in return for that body. However, the master surprises him, saying he wants nothing in return. Instead, he asks him to use that being's body as he sees fit. Upon hearing this, he first goes after the bastards who caused his death, but after achieving this goal, he no longer has any other plans in mind. So from that moment on, his master's wishes become the center of his world. And well, when he comes face to face with Lloyd, the monster realizes that the boy has indeed shown himself to be very different from the others, as he was the first to notice his threads before anyone else. And what's more, he also intentionally made contact with one of his threads, which was utterly terrifying for the monster, because upon making contact with Lloyd, he felt such despair that it paralyzed him. Sensing an enormous mana coming from the boy, the monster begged for mercy and asked the boy to let him go. But upon remembering that Lloyd was a threat to his master, the monster draws strength from beyond and goes on the attack, even though it only has an arm available to fight. In this, Lloyd projects a barrier around his body, avoiding suffering that attack. Afterward, Lloyd hits the monster and notices that it has stopped reacting automatically. The monster asks what the boy intends to do with it. Lloyd replies that he will take them to study how the magical formulas are interacting in its body. After all, a ghoul who can use abilities from when it was still alive is a rare occurrence. And as he says this, Lloyd notices that the monster spoke to him and is then astonished by it. As for Grimm, she suggests that the ghoul must be an ethereal, which in turn possessed the body of another being. Upon hearing this, Lloyd becomes even more interested in meeting the monster, and so he asks the creature to accompany them. Upon hearing this, he begins to cry blood, and then wonders if those tears are his or those of the Civil War, which in this case is his host. As for Grimm, she praises the monster, saying he has great courage to face Lloyd without running away. Hearing this, the monster remembers the hardships he had to face in the world he grew up in, and realizes that facing Lloyd is far more challenging than anything he faced when he was alive. And for the first time, he sees a kind hand reaching out to him. The monster thanks Lloyd for this consideration, and then apologizes for everything he's done to him. With that, he remembers a time with his master when he was introduced to a stone that, supposedly, contained a divine spell called Luma Maxima, and once broken, the rotten flesh the monster controls, as well as his ethereal body, will be eradicated in an instant. Well, returning to the present, the monster decides to use the stone, and after destroying it, he simply disappears from everyone's sight. Jareel then deduces that he used sacred magic, something unusual coming from a ghoul, especially Luma Maxima, an advanced spell only a few can cast. Suddenly, they hear a voice coming from the dust pile, and the being asks them to protect its master. Hearing this, Lloyd becomes even more curious to discover everything behind the being. Meanwhile, Babylon asks Escher to take the priest to the Adventurers Guild. Hearing this, she becomes worried about him. However, Babylon says she will be fine and asks only that she go. Furthermore, he tells her not to ask for reinforcements. After all, the being in front of her cannot be defeated by anyone. Alone with the being, Babylon asks if he's some kind of monster. However, the master shows no interest in explaining what he is. After all, he's already determined to kill Babylon, so getting to know him better won't matter. During the fight, Babylon recalls the conversation he had with Lloyd before he left. At the time, they both found one of the priests strange, who, in this case, is the enemy he's now facing, although danger is imminent. Lloyd says he's not terribly afraid of the situation, deducing that this is because he can't fathom the power of his enemy. And during the fight, Babylon realizes that there is only one way to stop his enemy. In this case, he must use purifying class magic. In this, he attacks the enemy with a sequence of several flashes, the one arriving completely. But in the end, he is hit by a full blow, and then is thrown to the ground in a pool of blood. My friends, business is getting better. Well, I definitely want to see Lloyd against this master. And I also want to see him using this neuron magic. This crazy guy controlling others is going to be really good. So, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll definitely bring you more.